All right, I got another one for you guys. This is going to be talking about Palworld again, kind of some of the lessons that I've learned from playing the game as an indie developer, as a software engineer, as a gameplay designer. So, just some of the things that I've run across that have changed my perspective on some things, and also kind of made me think back to some other games that probably should have changed my perspective and didn't, and they now do. Just kind of, I guess, kind of bringing things together overall. So yeah, here's kind of the rundown. Let me just get right into it. So I guess the first lesson that I've noticed with this is boss design is crucial, and this actually takes me back to Elden Ring, to Souls like games, which probably should have made me think about boss fights and the mechanics behind them a little more than it did when I was playing those games. But yeah, the overall takeaway that I've had is challenging Souls like bosses make for great milestones in your gameplay, in your game loop. They kind of serve as that marker of accomplishment and give you that achievement to strive to take down that boss and then get ready for the next boss. Um, Also, a big thing with boss fights is bosses with lots of character and personality. That is especially true in Palworld and also in Elden Ring. I mean, you have very distinct, very unique bosses across these games that have different attributes, different attack patterns, different mechanics, and have a lot of character to them. They have very unique designs, and that is crucial, I think, in my book, is to keep things interesting and especially with the unique attacks for each boss. That makes you kind of approach each one with fresh eyes, kind of approach each one as a milestone to be overcome. And it's different than the last boss you fought because it is a totally different approach. So I mean, those are very important things that I probably should have taken from Elden Ring and didn't, or even Dark Souls and didn't. So yeah, thanks to Palworld, it kind of got me thinking about that a lot more, and how those boss fights work, and even thinking back to like, all right, you guys probably know by now that I'm a huge fan of Mad Max, but the boss fights in those games were pretty similar. I mean, every boss pretty much had the same attack patterns, pretty much were the same boss. Some of them were tougher than others. Some of the environment was tougher than others, but the bosses were pretty much the same, and they weren't, it wasn't like approaching it in Palworld or Elden Ring where they are their own thing. They are their own unique boss to fight. They're your own unique achievement to accomplish. It's just like, oh well, I got to the end. Here's the boss. The boss is the same as the last boss. Maybe a little tougher, maybe a little more damaging with his attacks, but they're the same attacks. So yeah, that was not a good thing in Mad Max. Everything else in that game was amazing, but that part kind of differentiates itself from Elden Ring. So definitely going to be looking at more of a unique approach to each boss from now on. The next thing I wanted to talk about is survival crafting is popular. So yeah, the whole concept of base building, and especially in this game, base building was done very well. Um, Keeps things moving along, lets you kind of focus on something that isn't directly out in the world. It's kind of your home base, and it kind of makes you incentivized to kind of build a nice place for yourself to craft those items and level up your gear, level up your pals, do all the things that you need to do to keep things moving forward. So I mean, the base building in this game is fantastic, and it has definitely inspired me to think about that in the future. I don't know of any. I mean, I have a few games that might have base building in them, but nothing in the immediate future. But it's definitely gonna stick in my head for those games down the road. Um, Another thing is being able to craft your own gear is far more satisfying than a loot drop. Um, just thinking back to like my MMO playing days, and it ended up being that the raids and the loot drops were more important than crafted gear, and I always kind of I never really liked that. I always thought like you should, if you're like leveling up these crafting skills, you should be able to craft something way more impressive than you'd get out in the world, if you had the right gear and the right skills. And that's kind of the case in this game in Palworld, is that you can craft a whole lot more gear. I mean, in theory, you can find that all out there in the world, but you're crafting it yourself. You're making your own weapons, your own armor, and that kind of stuff. And it's it's the ability to do that, and kind of have a focus on that that really kind of interests me, because it seems like that's not what other games have done in the past, and it's good to see it. It's nice to see that you can really craft some very good stuff in your home base, with with the right gear, with the right skills, and all that stuff. Um, Kind of in the same vein is the tech trees, with a good balance on tech trees. Building out your skills to craft new items, to build different buildings, to build stronger buildings. Having that be balanced is crucial. I mean, that's kind of an obvious, but they really did a good job in Palworld of doing that. So it's definitely something that stuck with me as far as making sure that balance is just right. And then back to the more of the survival side of things, the survival elements in this game are very light. So like for hunger and cold and that kind of stuff, and it doesn't. Some survival games take it way too hardcore, and it is absolutely a survival game first. So if you starve pretty quick. And this game is not like that. It's very light. It's just kind of there in the background. You don't really need to worry about it too much, but it is there, and you do need to worry about it sometimes. So it's kind of keeping you on your toes, without crushing them, basically, without giving you this albatross around your neck that you have to eat every 30 minutes in order to stay alive and not die. It's kind of just more of a background thing. So that's kind of nice, to have the survival there, but not be crushing with it. So good on them for doing that. Absolutely. If I ever put survival mechanics in a game, this is definitely the way to do it. Not like not like some of the other survival games out there. And obviously there is a place for that, and I do enjoy those games. But when you're mixing these other aspects and it's not your primary thing, don't have it be crushing. I guess that's the lesson I took away from that. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the RPG elements that they put in this game, like the RPG elements that they did very well with. Palworld, if you don't know, has elemental strengths and weaknesses to your pals. Also to like weapons and armor, there are certain like poison and fire arrows, and you have resistances in your armor values that can resist against certain types of damage. And having that balance, having that mix, gives you that rock paper scissors mechanic. Which is really satisfying, and kind of lets you really get into the weeds on that kind of stuff, and kind of dig into like what pal should you be using to fight this other pal or this other boss. And having that that mechanic in place like that really adds some depth to the gameplay and allows you to experiment and to build things out. The other thing in the RPG elements is having balanced character attributes that are secondary to gear stats. Now, like for example, your armor and your weapons are going to level up your attack and your defense far more than just putting points into your character attributes for attack and defense. It's not that they don't matter; those character attributes don't matter, but because the gear is an aspect of it, it kind of incentivizes you to put stats in other things like carry weight and stamina and that kind of stuff. So it balances, it forces you to make different decisions with those character stats than you might otherwise do for surviving in the world by just maxing out your attack and defense. So it's good to see that, and especially because like the carry weight is a very important thing for harvesting things and being able to haul a lot of stuff back to your base to be able to do something. And stamina obviously for running and that kind of stuff makes a big difference. The more stamina you have, so they're all important stats, and I guess the balancing with that gear kind of makes them all important, so makes them equally important to put points into and think about what you want to put your points into. So it's good to see that kind of an approach done, and it's certainly something I'd like to adopt in any RPGs that I'm going to be working on in the future, or RPG elements that I'm including in my games, which basically all of my games have RPG elements to one degree or another. But yeah, I mean, it's good to see. So the next thing is Pokemon is very popular. So that's the lesson. There you go. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, Pokemon is very popular. But the way that they did the pals and being able to call upon your sidekick and your minion and have them there at your command, have them help with your base, have them level up with you, and give them tasks to do, and all that kind of stuff. That's really neat. And having all these, like for example, right there, the feed box, like having all these pal specific things that you build in your base just for them, like straw beds and places to rest and places to recharge and places to get food. And it's basically it turns into something where you're really building your base for your pals more than you're building your base for yourself. And that's kind of neat, having that little kind of aspect of care for all your little creatures in your pal base. It's kind of neat to have that in this game. And obviously, I mean, it is kind of a parody of Pokemon, but it's also its own thing, and there's some good mechanics there that are worthy of kind of keeping an eye out for. So I don't know if I'll ever use it. There is a game that I have in my repertoire that might apply some of that as far as NPCs that you can control. So it might translate. But that's kind of a specific one for sure. Because not many games have that kind of mechanic. Obviously, Pokemon being the big player in that industry, and Nintendo not being very nice with things that rip them off. So yeah, can't imagine why. Anyway, the next thing I wanted to talk about is the bright and cheery world design, and it's got this hint of the post-apocalypse. They don't really talk about it much, and that is kind of great because it's there, and you can see it, like all of the old the technology items. I can't remember what you call them, but when you find these ancient technology artifacts, they're like spark plugs and stuff. So yeah, it's interesting to see, like, there was a world that was like ours, and then something happened and it became this world. And I guess I'm not that far in the game yet, so I don't really know the full story. I'm not even sure if the full story is even in the game. But it makes me want to learn more by not giving that away too early. And it's also just the bright, cheery aesthetic of the game. Like, it's very cartoony. It's very bright. It's very, like, nice, and the green trees and later on red trees and gold trees, and the different environments are just very bright, very colorful, very, very, very cheery. And especially now in winter, I mean, I'm in upstate New York, so yeah, it's nice to see a nice, bright, cheery world in the middle of winter and in the middle of January and February, because that's the only place you're going to see it is on a computer screen, because outside it is pretty glum. So yeah, I guess that has something to do with it. Maybe the season, maybe when it came out, but I don't know. I mean, just bright, cheery games are nice to see, and it doesn't hurt, I guess. So the last thing is, or rather, the second to last thing is the simple AI can sometimes be great AI. Like, the NPCs in this game, they're not particularly intelligent, and this obviously conflicts with the boss AI. But even the boss AI, it's not rocket science. It's not like, they didn't spend like their entire budget on making incredible AI, because some of the lower level, like, NPCs, they tend to get stuck in walls and stuff, and it's not super complex. It's very simple AI, and it works very well, except for when they get stuck in rocks, I guess. But even then, it's kind of forgivable in a way. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being overly optimistic on Palworld's part, but it's not rocket science. They didn't break the bank making AI. They didn't put a lot of effort into it, and it does have some bugs, but like I said, they're forgivable. And it's just a simplistic approach that works very well. And that kind of brings me to my last lesson learned, which is probably the most important one for me, which is don't overcomplicate things. Oh boy, I got a little crash here, I guess. Yeah, don't overcomplicate things. So, I mean, Palworld is a fairly big game, and it like I said, it's $6.75 million to develop it. But nothing in it is overly complicated. Nothing is over the top. Nothing is like insanely high detailed in terms of models. Like, they're relatively low poly models. It's relatively simplistic. But the art style is great. It's consistent, and nothing in this game is gonna is gonna be complex in terms of coding, but it all works well together, and it's all kind of uniform. Like everything works. Everything looks like it should be there. Um, so I guess that's the big takeaway is that don't not overcomplicating things, but keeping them so they fit together. I tend to go overboard in my coding, and these guys clearly did not go overboard. Um, they did the right amount of work for the end result, and I tend to not do that, and that's definitely a big lesson for me is to not go over the top with the code, go over the top with the game design, and end up getting stuck on things. Just make a relatively simple game that has a lot of depth, has a lot of lore, has a lot of art, that has that you know that gravity to it, but not be overly complicated, not be overly trying to tell too big a story or what have you. I mean, Palworld is a simple story. It's relatively straightforward, but it's got its elements and it's got its intrigue, and it's just like I said, don't overcomplicate things, I guess. So yeah, that's the lessons that I've learned so far. I might learn some more as I continue down this road, but those are the big ones, I think. So let me know what you guys think. Are you a game developer, and have you learned any lessons from this video or from Palworld playing it? What were your takeaways? So let me know those in the comments. Also, take that survey if you get a chance, and I will talk to you guys later.